Hey everybody, Claire here, and today we are back with the awesome Shira.
Hello.
And I cannot believe the amazing response from everybody.
Yeah, it was so cool, and actually I feel comfortable admitting that was my first YouTube video ever. Well, the first two, I guess. And everyone was so kind and had great questions, and it was so positive. So
I know, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I have all of y'all's questions here. And so we picked some of like the ones that we found to be like really good, just sort of like almost like umbrella questions.
Yeah.
So we could answer a bunch of questions with that one.
And there were a lot of you guys that asked some of the same questions, so that was so cool because it meant that probably a lot more people are wondering those things.
Exactly. So what are your thoughts on a vegan or vegetarian or paleo lifestyle?
So with vegan and vegetarian, I think that you can certainly do it healthfully if it's balanced and you're getting enough high quality protein. It doesn't mean vegan and vegetarian isn't inherently healthier than a regular diet, but you can most certainly do it healthfully. And I think what it really comes down to is what we were saying before is it really comes down to what you believe with animal rights and that kind of stuff. So you're doing it for that reason, 100%, but I wouldn't do it necessarily because you want to lose weight, because a lot of times, because you're cutting out a lot of things like dairy and meats, you wind up having a lot of grains.
Yeah, you get a lot of grains and a lot of really awesome fats.
Yeah.
But for instance, if you want to try to fill yourself up on a vegan diet and you tuck into like a delicious avocado, that's fantastic, or like a handful of almonds, but those are all really calorie dense versus, for instance, if you had like a lean piece of salmon on top of a salad, like you're probably going to get, you know, more protein, more sort of like fulfillment and for less calories. So yeah, a vegan vegetarian lifestyle shouldn't be like a health sort of diet choice. It should be more, like because you are passionate about environmental issues or animal rights issues. And then paleo.
Yes. So paleo, there's a lot to love about paleo. There really is, because it's stripped down and it's cutting out a lot of processed foods and stuff like that. On the other hand, it can be restrictive. You're not having whole grains like brown rice or quinoa or certified gluten-free oat flour, which are all things that I really love in a diet. I believe you also don't have beans.
Yeah, there's no legumes.
Yeah.
And I believe that's for, I mean, I could be wrong here, but for like acidic reasons?
That could be true also, but it's also that, you know, those produce gas. Basically, when we were talking in the last video about the good bacteria,
right?
It can aggravate things for people with like Crohn's or IBS or you know, like inflammatory bowel stuff.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are other reasons too, but the reality is if you don't have a sensitivity to those things, then there's such a great source of protein and also, you know, a great source of starch, but it's high fiber and it keeps you full. So, you know, when a client is looking to jumpstart kind of a plan, a lot of times I'm kind of going off a lot of the things that paleo is built on, like removing processed foods and added sugar and alcohol, stuff like that. But I think that ultimately, as with a lot of these diets, that if it's not sustainable, then, you know, it's difficult and you may fall off. And so I find that way when something's too restrictive. But that being said, there are tons of people that love it, and so if you're getting a balanced diet,
like, I mean, I think paleo is one of the few, I guess, like fads, if you want to describe it as that, or like recent diet trends that it actually is, you know, it is pretty sustainable and you can have like a whole diet off of it.
Yeah.
Because you're basically getting in, you know, you can have nuts, you can have protein, you can have greens, you can have so many great things, and you're cutting out a lot of the stuff that is not very good for you. But yeah, the only ones that I always kind of am like, I don't like, okay, is always like the whole grain thing.
Yeah.
And then and then the legumes. Those are the ones where I'm like, oh man. Like, cause I love beans. I love beans so much.
And that's why I love beans. I love lentils. They're so good for you.
No hummus.
I know. Oh my God, hummus. It keeps you full and it's delicious. And so, you know, if it doesn't bother you, I feel like that's an unnecessary restriction.
I love how your answers are always so balanced.
Thank you.
It's like a conversation with the most reasonable like nutrition expert ever.
Well, It's so, I mean, that's so sweet to say, but also it's because, you know, after doing this for some time, you realize that in the short term, a lot of people want like all these rules and regulations, but ultimately it's a pretty balanced. It's like, don't have so much of that, you know, have a balanced diet, all that, which I think in the short term is hard for people to learn, but ultimately it's what's sustainable.
Well, I think sustainable is the right word here too, because I feel like when people create a lot of restrictions for themselves and then they mess up, there's this thing of like, well, I ruined it. I guess I'm gonna have some cake.
Exactly. I talk about it all the time. It's this thing where, you know, you're eating something, you're not even enjoying it, and you're like, well, now it's all ruined. I may as well have 10 more. Yeah. And it's like, why not, if it's really worth it, eat it and enjoy it and then move on. It's such a happier way to live too.
I totally hear you on that. So the next one is breakfast important? And what about finishing like all of your eating by about like 6 p.m.?
A lot of people ask about this. So let's start with breakfast. So breakfast is really good to have. It really is. I mean, the research shows that it starts your metabolism. It's really, really good for you. That being said, and I think we've talked about this before too, is that if someone's never eaten breakfast in their lives, and there's a lot of people out there that are just like, oh, I wake up and the idea of having food makes me nauseous, then I certainly wouldn't start there. But what's interesting is I find that when I'm working with someone and they weren't a breakfast eater to begin with, and we start making it so that their dinner isn't so huge and they don't go to sleep stuffed, that they actually wake up hungry, so it almost self-corrects itself. And then with you know, stopping at 6, I totally disagree. I think that, you know, that's not realistic for a lot of people who work and stuff like that. And I would never want someone to go to sleep hungry. So I think that, you know, I wouldn't recommend eating a huge dinner late at night. And I think when you eat a smaller dinner, then you're more likely to be amped for breakfast. But you certainly don't need to stop at 6 p.m. It's not like a hard out at 6 p.m.
I get the sense that it actually probably has less to do like by 6 p.m. and more to do about when you actually go to bed and when you ought to be going to bed. Because there's certain things that happen in the sleep cycle at certain times of night, that it's when your kidney is working, it's when your liver is working, and you want to be asleep for it to be working as efficiently as possible, right?
It's true. It's totally true.
So if you go to bed at like 1 a.m., you could just be missing out on your body getting to be its most efficient. And I feel like usually if you're going to bed at 1 a.m., you're probably eating dinner at like 9, and that's kind of how it all gets like pushed backwards. Whereas if you're having dinner at 6, that tells your body like, well, it's nighttime.
Yes.
Our next question is from Taylor Elaine. How do you get a healthy GI tract?
Oh, so I think of it in terms of these 3 R's. So the first is remove, and that's really, you're removing things that are going to irritate the gut lining, which is what we talked about in our first video. The gut lining is really important to kind of overall health. And so the first thing is like anything that's inflammatory. So alcohol, excess sugar, processed foods, stuff like that, you know, things that are inorganic and stuff like that that may have, you know, toxins or pesticides, stuff like that. So all of those things are going to irritate the gut. And so if you remove them, then you can come in, and the second R is restore. So you're restoring that gut lining. And then you're letting it kind of heal itself. And in that time, there's certain supplements. I'm not like a huge supplement person, but in that time, glutamine could be something really good because it helps regenerate that lining. And also omega-3s. Okay. And the third is replacing. And so that's really about getting that good bacteria back in your gut. And so that's probiotics. It's, you know, fermented foods like kimchi and sauerkraut, which I'm obsessed with. And I know that you are too.
I do. I love fermented stuff.
Yeah.
So 21 Earl the Pearl. I love that.
I love that.
It's so good. Thanks for that, Earl. Can you get enough protein if you're vegetarian but allergic to nuts? Which is a really interesting question.
Yeah.
I feel like we should maybe say like asterisk if you're vegan but allergic to nuts, because then eggs.
Yeah, exactly. And I was thinking that, you know, because obviously eggs are such an incredible source of protein. Yeah, you definitely can. I think that in that case, you definitely have to be serious about it and really think about it and make sure you are getting it. But it means that you're getting lentils and beans and stuff like that. And in that case, it may be worth getting like a really clean protein supplement, like even like brown rice powder protein, which is great. So you most certainly can, but you do want to kind of stay on it and make sure you are getting enough.
Yeah. And then what is the healthiest milk option? So soy, nut milk, rice milk, and dairy milk.
Okay. So I guess it really depends on who you are and if you're sensitive to like animal, like goats or cow's milk. If you're not sensitive to that and you're fine with it, then I mean, I'm cool with like a 2% cow's milk. Like I'm sensitive to that, so I can't, but I used to love like a 2% and some tea. So creamy and delicious, and again, that healthy fat that's delicious and it keeps you full. As far as non-dairy milk, my favorite is coconut milk.
Oh
yeah.
How did I not even think? Yes.
It's so like a fresh coconut milk is
my God,
my all-time.
It's like a pina colada.
Absolutely. It's
so
good. It has so much, you know, it has the medium chain triglycerides, which are so good for you, and they're broken down more quickly and you can use them more readily, and it has that healthy fat, so it keeps you full. And it's not just like, you know, for instance, because it's supposed to replace actual milk, which in my case it would be, you know, a higher in fat milk, you want it to have some fat so that it actually fills you up. Claire definitely has recipes all over,
for nut milk and
for sure.
And I did a collaboration with Laurel from Sweet Laurel and coconut milk. And then, is buying organic that important?
The short answer is yes, in that, you know, because organic produce is grown in soil that hasn't been depleted and it doesn't have pesticides and all of this, the food is more nutrient dense because the soil is more nutrient dense, and it's not gonna have those chemicals in it. That being said, not everyone can afford it. And in those cases, what you do if you're kind of gonna get some things organic and some things not, what I really recommend is things that have really thin or edible skins. Yeah, I would recommend doing those organic. Like berries.
Grapes.
Yep, exactly.
And I think another thing to mention too is that when you go to the farmer's market, and if you do get to go to the farmer's market, it's awesome. The only thing to remember though is that just because it's at a farmer's market does not mean it's organic. They have to be certified organic. But there's also this one side of it that to me is such a bummer for these farmers, which is that they can be organic in every single way that they raise their own crops. But if they are next door to a non-organic farm,
interesting.
Oh yeah, because of the wind.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they can be, and a lot of times you'll talk to farmers and they go, well, like, are you organic? And they'll say, well, we're yes, but no. Like, we're we're organic in every possible way, but we cannot get the official document because of what our location is. So here's another one that came up a few times, and I'm gonna be honest, I literally had never heard of this before, so I'm excited for you to enlighten me. So this is from Man and Drewer. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Does Teatox really work?
So I actually saw this on the comments and I had no idea what it was. And so I looked it up, and I'm glad I did because it's clearly a thing that people are wondering about. I'm not particularly into this. From my understanding, it's basically, a clean diet, but then on top of it, you're having these teas, and they're kind of like laxative teas.
Okay, are they kind of like Chinese herbs?
From my understanding, it's natural, but the deal with the laxative tea is that it's going to irritate your gut, which as we know, we don't want to do. And with laxatives, you're losing a lot of water, you're losing minerals and stuff like that. I think you can do it. Again, it's one of these things that's kind of catchy, and even it sounds kind of cool, but at the end of the day, a laxative isn't really a great choice. One tea a day, I'm fine with you having, a green tea or black tea for caffeine and kind of, for some people, they say it revs your metabolism. I'm not really sure, but that's fine, but I wouldn't do the laxative tea. I really wouldn't.
Nichita Kocheri, which is so fun to say.
Yeah, that's a lovely name.
Is asking, as a college student, what are some inexpensive tips for staying healthy in the dorm?
So I love this question, and I feel like because a lot of people asked, and I love that people are thinking about this, and the reality is it's not easy. And I think it starts with, you know, making sure that the mini fridge and stuff is stocked with things that you like. I love the idea of doing overnight oats.
And I was thinking chia seed pudding would
amazing.
be really great too, because all you need to do is just take like a Tupperware, and then just same with overnight oats, just put the oats or the chia seeds or both. And then pour like almond milk or whatever you want on top, and then just throw some fruit on top. Boom, done. It's in a corner. You don't have to think about it, and you have an instant snack.
And then the other thing I think is just making sure, you know, if you are drinking and that kind of stuff, that you're being smart about kind of what's going in that and how much you are drinking, because, you know, it is empty calories, and, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing I'd say, just as an older and wiser drinker, if you can just look at the label, and I'll put it this way, just like, don't do a sweet and sour mix.
Don't do a sweet and sour mix.
Don't do a Jack and Coke, like just don't do it. I know it sounds great, but like I just wouldn't do it, because the sugar is where the calories are. And then secondly, that's where the hangover comes from.
Totally. Be smart about it. You know, lime juice is great, kind of spicier stuff.
Totally. Like, I mean, for me, when I was baby Claire and like, you know, senior college, and all I would drink was like Malibu rum, because it's like 20% alcohol and like tastes like just like a melted popsicle.
Yeah, this tastes like vacation.
This tastes like vacation right now. But for instance, if you want like an easy one that actually will continue to hydrate you, do fresh coconut water with dark rum.
I love that.
You're welcome.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Just
that's
immediately
just like dropping knowledge.
So the next question is from Charlie Liu. Can you give advice for someone in high school who wants to become a nutritionist?
So I think one of the best things you could do if you wanted to be a registered dietitian like me is volunteer at a hospital, because in the training you do a residency at a major hospital and you rotate in each disease state. And it's really tough, and you do have to feel comfortable being in a hospital setting, and it may not be what you want to do long term. It wasn't for me, but you still got to do it. And so I think that the most you could do to kind of get comfortable in that environment would be helpful.
See, I think that's such awesome advice, because I think a lot of times young people, when they start on a path that they think is the career they want, they get thrown off by how the beginning is kind of rough.
Yeah.
It's not glamorous, it's a lot of work, and it doesn't feel like the work leads towards anything, because it's like, well, I'm getting coffee, or I'm just like picking up papers from point A and putting them to point B and doing it again. But it's kind of a way to sort of build your bona fides. You know, if you can put that on a resume and you can talk about that experience, it just shows that you're one step closer to really being on that path. Well, this was so much fun.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I love doing these.
This was great. Well, if you guys have any other questions, I'm sure there will be more questions.
I hope so, yeah.
Put them below and we'll do another one. It's going to be super fun. But thank you again.
Thank you so much.
This was so fun. All right, and remember, ShiraRD.com.
Oh,
Go
thanks.
check it out. All right, bye guys.